Section 36 of The Golden Web by Phillips OPPENHEIM. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Book 2, Chapter 15. A Friend. A man in the city who was an old friend of Lord Nunneley stopped the latter as he was on the point of entering his club. "By the by, Nunneley," he said, "did I understand, I think I saw it in the papers, that the marriage between your daughter and Stirling Deane was off?" "The engagement has been broken off," answered Lord Nunneley, a little stiffly. "Why?" "That's all right," said the man. "The only thing was that as I was one of the people who you came to ask about Deane, I felt that if it was still on I ought to tell you that things aren't supposed to be just the same as they were." "Do you mean about Deane?" asked Lord Nunneley. His friend nodded. "There are some very curious rumors going about," he said. "You remember, of course, his charging a man named Hefferom, a South African, with an attempt at blackmail, the other day. The man was committed for trial, and there was not much came out in evidence before the magistrates. Since then, however, people have been talking. They say that Hefferom had actual knowledge of documents proving that Deane's title to the Little Anna Gold Mine was a false one, and that the mine in reality belonged to Hefferom himself and a partner." "That sounds like a very curious story," Lord Nunneley remarked. "If it is true, why doesn't Hefferom produce his document and have done with it?" "Because it has been stolen," the other answered. "There are all sorts of stories going about, too, concerning the theft. The point remains, however, that there is a strong feeling that the document in question does exist, and that it may turn up. If so, of course, it would ruin Deane. I see that the shares of his corporation have had a most tremendous drop, so it seems as though there might be something in it. Buy a special edition this afternoon and you'll know more about it." Lord Nunneley nodded. "Thank you," he said. "I will do so." Lord Nunneley walked slowly along Pall Mall. After all, there was no need to buy a paper. On the placards which the boys were displaying as he neared Trafalgar Square were great headlines: "Extraordinary Drop of Shares in the Gold Mines Association. Panic in the City." Lord Nunneley bought a paper and stood for a few minutes reading it. Then he called a taxicab and gave the man the address of Deane's offices. He was well known there, and Deane's confidential man at once came forward. "Mr. Deane will see you, of course, my lord," he said. "He is really disengaged now, but we are obliged to deny him to everybody because of these interviewers. Will you come with me, my lord?" Lord Nunneley found himself ushered into Deane's private room. Deane was dictating rapidly to his secretary. As usual, he was calm, self-possessed, carefully groomed and dressed. There was nothing about his appearance in any way to suggest a panic. He heard his visitor's name, however, with surprise. "Nunneley!" he exclaimed, rising to his feet. Lord Nunneley nodded and held out his hand. "I was in the city and thought I'd look you up, Deane," he said. "Can I have a word or two with you?" "Certainly," Deane answered. "Give us 5 minutes, Ellison, or stay away until I ring," he added to his secretary. Lord Nunneley accepted an easy chair and also a cigarette, but he seemed in no great hurry to explain his business. "I was very sorry, Deane," he said at last, "to see the papers this evening. I hope the trouble isn't very serious." "Do you hold any of our shares?" Deane asked. "If I did," said the other, coloring a little, "I should not have come here." Deane accepted the reproof. "I beg your pardon." "I dare say," continued Lord Nunneley, "my coming seems to you, under the circumstances, a little superfluous. However, what I wanted to say is this. You see, Olive is our only child, and that made us very anxious about anything to do with her. I am sure that you yourself must feel now, when you are under so much anxiety, that it is better not to have the added responsibility of your engagement upon your shoulders." "I have never questioned your wisdom in breaking it off," Deane said quietly. "Under the circumstances, I agree with you that it is a very good thing." "That's all right," Lord Nunneley continued a little hastily. "Of course, neither you nor Olive are children, and you are not the sort to wear your hearts upon your sleeve. In short," he added, somewhat abruptly, "you'll both get over it. There's no doubt about that. I didn't come to revert to this matter at all. I simply wanted to say that though our relations are changed, I still do feel a considerable amount of friendship for you, Deane, and I wanted to come and just tell you I was sorry. And look here," he went on a little awkwardly, "I've between £7,000 and £8,000 for which I am looking for an investment, and if the money's any use to you, Deane, why say the word and I'll write you a cheque on the spot." Deane looked at his visitor for a moment in astonishment, which triumphed over the natural impassivity of his expression. Then a little flush rose in his cheeks. He got to his feet and held out his hand. "Nunneley," he said, "this is awfully good of you. I shall not forget it. Believe that. If we wanted money, or if I did personally, I'd accept your offer like a shot." "Too much of a drop in a bucket, I suppose," Lord Nunneley remarked. "It isn't much, I know." "It isn't that," Deane interrupted. "The situation is simply that our shares have had a big drop because of certain rumors about our title to the Little Anna Gold Mine. If those rumors were confirmed, £5,000 or £6,000 wouldn't help us. If they are not confirmed, and they die a natural death, as I imagine they must, our shares will recover themselves, and we shall not need money." "You don't believe in the existence of any such document, then?" Lord Nunneley asked. "I do not believe that it will be produced," Deane answered. "And if it were produced," he went on, "I do not believe in its validity. I would not say as much even as this to the reporters. But the document about which people have been talking is simply an original claim to the Little Anna Gold Mine, which was deserted by the very man who put me on to it, and in whose name the claim stands. You see, therefore, that any attempt to establish a legal claim is more or less a swindle." Lord Nunneley rose to his feet. "You are not really so very much alarmed, then?" Deane shook his head. "This drop in shares, after all," he said, "does not affect us particularly, except for the time. It simply means that the market declares that we are a few £100,000 poorer today than we were yesterday. Whether the market is right or not remains to be proved. Well, I am glad to have seen you at any rate, Deane, and remember, if there is anything I can do—" "You have already," Deane said, "done a great deal. Lord Nunneley, I shall not forget your visit or your offer." "That's all right, Deane," Lord Nunneley declared. "Olive did not know I was coming, but I am sure if she had known, she would have sent her love. Don't bother to ring. I can find my way out." The visit of his projected father-in-law seemed to Deane like a pleasant little oasis in the middle of a long, dreary day. These rumors of which Lord Nunneley had heard seemed to have come into existence during the last few hours. There had been some large failures lately, and investors were all nervous. The country was short of money. In ordinary times an attack upon the stability of such a corporation as his would have been impossible. Today nothing seemed impossible. In his heart Deane knew or felt that the situation was safe, yet the very fact that these rumors had sprung into being seemed to denote the line of defense which Hefferom's lawyers were prepared to offer in the coming trial. He would be accused everywhere, if not in words, in suggestion, of complicity in the murder of Sinclair. The existence of that document would be believed in. It would be said openly, perhaps, that he was responsible himself for its suppression. It was not the fact that on paper he was nearly £250,000 poorer than he had been a week ago that troubled him. It was the reflection that, bold though his words had been, it was within the power of the man who lay awaiting his trial practically to ruin him. The question of the whereabouts of the document might be, in a few weeks, the most discussed matter in London. Deane, acting upon a sudden impulse, left his office by the back entrance and drove to the small hotel where Winifred was staying. Miss Rowan was at home, he was told, and after a few minutes' delay he was shown into her sitting room. "Miss Rowan will be with you in a moment," her maid announced, coming through from the bedroom. "She is with her dressmaker at present." Deane nodded and took up the newspaper mechanically from the table. The room seemed to him almost faint with the perfume of flowers. He glanced around carelessly and suddenly found his attention riveted upon her writing table. In a little silver vase, standing by itself, was the red rose which he had bought for her 2 days since. Section 36.